Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel and today I'm going to be doing another midweek movie review. This week I'm going to be discussing the documentary film Natchez, directed by Suzannah Herbert. This is a relatively recent film, I believe. Letterboxd tells me that it's a 2025 release, which probably means that it's been doing the circuits, the film, the film festival circuit for 6 to 8 months. But this came to my town, and I wanted to give it a watch because I've heard some good things about it. So that's what we're going to do today. So yes, this film is a documentary, much like the fact that I occasionally read nonfiction books. I also occasionally watch documentary films. I enjoy a good documentary. I think that, I think it requires a level of skill to craft a narrative from reality and to make an argument with that narrative that is a very different kind of skill set from just making a fiction film. And the different kinds of techniques that go into doing documentaries and different kinds of documentaries I find very fascinating. So Natchez is about the town of Natchez, Mississippi. It is a very old town. It's a very historical town. It's one of the oldest settlements on the Mississippi River, and it has a very long and checkered history, as you might imagine, for a town in the Deep South in Mississippi. It was once sort of the center of the cotton industry in America, the cotton growing industry in America, which of course means that it was also a very important place for the selling and buying of human beings during the slave trade. Slavery was rampant in Natchez, obviously. Natchez was a very wealthy town, had, many millionaires per capita, and thus has a lot of beautiful antebellum mansions in it. And of course, that also means it had a large slave population, and there was a very, very large slave market there at one time. This documentary centers around sort of the conflicts that are arising within this town within the tourism industry, really. It's really about the tourism industry in Natchez, Mississippi, which is, of course, one of the major economic drivers of this town in this current day and age is tourism. Because of its status as such a historical town, that is what they basically live on, is the tourism. And this documentary really highlights the conflicts between more of the old guard, the wealthy white folks who have for decades called themselves the Garden Club, who run the main sort of tourist events in the town and open up their antebellum mansions to mostly white tourists twice a year and give tours dressed in their fancy crinolines and whatnot. And they are the ones who, they sort of profited from the Gone with the Wind romanticization of the antebellum South for decades. And of course, there's, a sort of new crop of people who are interested in the less pretty, the less savory parts of Natchez's history, especially around the history of slavery and the slave trade in this town. And these, mostly Black people, right, are sort of pushing back against those old, more romanticized, idealized visions of the antebellum South and bringing in more of a more direct discussion of the brutality and the reality of slavery and what it meant and what its effects have been. And this film carefully crafts a really fascinating narrative about these groups of people, how they interact with each other, and helps to illustrate a larger fact of American life in the present day, which is that we have not really fully reckoned with our racist history, right? We have not reckoned with the cost of slavery and Jim Crow and what that has done to our communities. And this small town in Mississippi really becomes a microcosm of the broader, the broader understanding of how America has dealt or not dealt with its racist past. And so this was a very good film. I enjoyed it a lot. It's shot beautifully. It's edited beautifully. I really I like to analyze documentaries as such, and the way that they're constructed, because I think that the documentarians, almost more than anybody else, really understand the power of imagery and the way that it can sway people's opinions in different directions, and the way that, a cleverly edited interview with somebody can put them in a good light or bad light, depending on, how the editor chooses to cut it, how the filmmaker chooses to present it and contextualize it. For instance, in this film, in Natchez, one of the people that she follows extensively is this older man who is, he's an upstanding white rich member of the community. His family has owned this antebellum mansion for generations, and he is a sort of kind of beloved member of the community, and he's very charming, and he gives these tours, and he makes all these little jokes, and he's very he seems very personable and very friendly. But through the course of the film, we can see the way that she sort of adds in these little insinuations that, there's been some accusations, or, he's been reprimanded by the Garden Club in the past for saying things that are, maybe not quite politically correct, or, someone else saying, well, he's never said anything in my hearing that I'm aware of, but it's possible that he has said things in the past or whatever. And over the course of the film, and then by the end of the film, in sort of the third act of the film, he goes off on an incredibly racist rant, right, about the blacks and how they're taking everything over, and it's horrific, right? It's absolutely horrific. But she has carefully crafted this narrative whereby we have started to sort of sympathize with this man. He's an older man, he's gay, he's got Parkinson's disease, he's dealing with all these issues in his life, and then he just goes off on this racist rant about the blacks and how they're, doing everything. He starts dropping the N-word, and it's terrible, and it's shot in such a way as to make it seem very horrific as well, which is not to say that the words coming out of his mouth are not awful, right? They're awful, but it's also shot in such a way as to make him seem even more sort of monstrous and awful. And to me, that's really fascinating. First of all, it's very effective, right? Because, assuming you're looking at a white audience who's inclined to be sympathetic to the old rich white people, but considers themselves sort of liberal and anti-racist, you're crafting a narrative whereby you're building sympathy for this guy, and then in the third act, you drop the racist rant that changes everything, right? That is going to potentially sway the opinion of your mostly white liberal audience in another direction. And it's really interesting how she chose to do that, how she chose to create that narrative. And it just goes to show that, because she didn't have to do it that way, right? She knew from the beginning, right, that he's probably a horrible racist. She could have put that rant in at the beginning and influenced our opinion of him through the entire course of the film, but she didn't. She chose to wait until the third act to examine that aspect of him. And, I think that says something about the filmmaker, right, and what she's trying to do. And I think it serves sometimes in some ways as a reminder that when we're watching films, especially if we're watching documentary films that are explicitly trying to make arguments about things, and are claiming that they're showing reality as it is, that, we still need to pay attention to how these things are put together and how these things work, because it's still a narrative that's being created. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing in this case. Like, I think it was very effective, and I think this movie is a good movie to watch. It's a good documentary. And it brings up a lot of really interesting and salient points about, our history of racism in America and the history of slavery and the ways in which we've kind of tried to bury it. But I still think it's good to pay attention to things like that and understand what's going on, and to have the kind of media literacy that is required to sort of pick those things apart, because it can be used for good, but that kind of power can also be used for evil. And, we see this over and over again, not just in documentary filmmaking, but in fiction, in narrative fiction filmmaking as well. All you have to do is look at a film like The Birth of a Nation, which is, a horrifically racist film, but it does some of the same techniques where it shows, it portrays Black people in a certain way, so as to make them seem awful, right? And it does so with a very specific purpose in mind. And that's the power of filmmaking. And that is, it is very powerful. And again, it can be used for very good purposes. It can be used to entertain. It can be used to enlighten. It can be used to help us understand the world better and ourselves better. It can do a lot of good things. It can also do some very bad things too. So that is what I wanted to talk about today with the film Natchez. Again, I think this is a very good movie. It's very effective, very well put together. It's beautifully shot. I love the contrast that she creates between, again, this beautiful antebellum architecture and antique furniture and, these beautiful homes that these rich white people have, contrasted with, the ugly, ugly history of slavery that is constantly sort of, bubbling up through the surface, through this genteel surface, in this town. And so that is what I have to say about Natchez. So yeah, that's what I've got for you today. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen this film, or if you have any other recommendations for films or books that are along these lines or like this. And yeah, we'll like this video if you like it, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.